My family forgot to buy my ticket to my brother's Paris wedding, or at least that's how it felt when the group chat filled with excited selfies and itinerary updates while I stared at an empty confirmation field that should have had my name on it. And at first I tried to laugh it off, assuming someone would notice the oversight and fix it. But as hours turned into a day and no one messaged me privately, I realized the omission might not be accidental. My brother Marco and I had a complicated history. We'd grown up close, then drifted apart over a mix of choices I regretted and choices he resented. But when he called to say he'd be marrying the woman he adored, I swallowed my pride and agreed to come. Family mattered even when it was messy. So when the news of the missing ticket landed like a stone in my chest, I did what I always do when the ground shifts under me. I took responsibility for my own next step. I didn't beg, I didn't plead. I made a plan. First I checked every angle. Maybe a split booking, maybe an oversight, maybe a misunderstanding about dates. Nothing. Then I looked at my finances and reality hissed back. I didn't have the disposable cash for an international flight 2 weeks out. I could have sat and stewed, or I could create the ticket. I chose the latter. I pulled overtime at the cafe where I'd been managing mornings, negotiated an extra freelance job doing logo work on the nights I used to watch TV, and sold 2 sentimental things I'd kept for years. My grandfather's old camera and the guitar I hadn't touched since college. Small sacrifices that felt enormous in the quiet of my apartment but necessary for a chance at showing up. Friends offered to help, and a coworker loaned me a spreadsheet template to track savings. It became almost meditative, each checked box a small victory. And because life enjoys the dramatic, my landlord delayed the rent by a week, which created a sliver of breathing room I used to buy the ticket the moment fares dipped. I didn't tell my family. This was between me and the flight confirmation number lighting up on my phone like a new promise. The night before departure I packed the camera and the guitar case matter-of-factly, like a pilgrim bringing only what mattered, and I slept the way people sleep when they've done the hard, honest work of choosing themselves. Landing in Paris felt unreal. The city smelled like rain and roasted chestnuts, and the streets were full of people who at that moment had no idea my family had forgotten me. I showed up at the hotel with a small bouquet I bought from a sidewalk vendor and an itinerary printout, and when my brother opened the door the surprise on his face was complicated. Part joy, part shame, part the recognition of how long we'd let silence do the damage that gentleness could have prevented. Word traveled quickly through the wedding party. Whispers of how I'd arrived alone, how I'd somehow contrived this plan without causing a scene. Later, as the ceremony wrapped beneath a soft Paris sky, I watched Marco exchange vows and felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for the years that had made this moment quieter than it should have been, relief that I had made the journey on my own terms. The real turning point came at the reception when, amid the clinking glasses and whispered congratulations, I asked my brother to step outside for a walk. The alley smelled of lilacs and the city's distant hum felt like its own kind of forgiveness. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked, voice low enough that only the wall between us might have heard. I told him about the ticket, the group chat, the empty confirmation field, and how it felt to be a footnote in a weekend everyone else counted on. He listened, jaw tight. Then he confessed quietly that decisions had been made in the flurry of planning, that someone had miscommunicated and another had assumed, and by the time the mistake was noticed there had been nowhere to move without appending the entire arrangement. And he hated the way it had felt, hated that I'd felt left out. His apology was small and honest. It didn't erase the sting, but it opened a door. We walked the Seine that night and traded stories of the gaps we'd let grow between us. My expectations, his pressures, the ways we'd both chosen convenience when confrontation might have healed things sooner. I could have delivered a sermon or demanded dramatic restitution, but the act of showing up on my own had already said what words might have struggled to express, that I mattered enough to fight for my place at a brother's wedding. In the months since, Marco and I have rebuilt not with fireworks but with steady invitations. Phone calls that turned into dinners, small apologies that turned into thoughtful conversations, and an honest commitment that next time no one would be forgotten, because we'd simply ask, early and plainly, who was coming and why. I returned home with a few photos taken on my grandfather's camera, a postcard with the Eiffel Tower's silhouette, and a renewed sense that when family falters, you don't have to wait to be rescued. You can create your own way forward, and sometimes the act of taking matters into your own hands heals more than the original hurt ever could.